Light Sports Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Light Sports Ramble. I am Troy Otradovic, as always, joined with Evan Witallison. Evan, did you get a chance to catch the Pro Bowl yesterday? Did you actually watch it?
I saw probably 5 to 7 minutes of it. I kind of had it on as background noise as I was reading Donald Driver's book, Drive.
Nice. How's that book?
Oh, awesome book. I love it.
Excellent.
I'm almost done with it even.
Excellent. Yeah, I turned it on a couple times just to see what the score was. It looked a little more exciting. It looked like there's a game going on, a football game, but it still didn't pique enough of my interest to sit down and watch it. Watched some of the highlights this morning on NFL Network. That was about it. So I know that... I ended up turning the Grammys on last night after a while, too. So the Grammys was a lot more entertaining than the Pro Bowl last night. Well, I had tweeted out...
Metallica performed at the Grammys.
Yeah, I didn't catch that either. I was actually doing some work for my other business. But I had tweeted out, I said I had a choice. I could watch the Pro Bowl or I could pull a tooth out with some rusty pliers. I chose the tooth. So, with that said, today we are going to get in and continue our series on grading the Green Bay Packers. And I think today's topic, a lot of listeners are probably going to have some very deep opinion because of our linebacking core. You and I had talked about linebacker play for much of the season in the recaps, but today we're grading the linebacker play. And before we get into the players, there's a lot of them. And you and I talked in the pre-show that we've got to kind of go a little quick. We've got to limit it to those that made significant impact. We have some discussion about those players we think have potential, what we need in the draft. But I'm going to throw the stat out to you. The one that I found doing the research today, and this is kind of a defensive stat, but I think a lot of it goes to the linebackers because our defensive line either couldn't get a push or the linebackers couldn't get up there to make a stop. But we were ranked 29th, Evan, against opponents converting 3rd and 1 runs. We gave up 82.4% on 3rd and 1 runs, 14 out of 17. And I contribute some of that to linebacker play because on 3rd and 1, the goal of the line is to get a push and the linebackers are to fill the gap and make the play, unless I'm off in left field. But we were terrible on 3rd and 1 runs, and I put some of that blame on the linebackers. So I don't know what your thought is about that stat before we get started. That's my thought. But if you have anything to say, go ahead. Otherwise, we can get right into it and start talking about individual players.
Yeah, I would put some of the blame there on the linebackers. They don't have a linebacking core that's going to, pop you in the mouth. They're ones that are going to kind of go to the side and pull and tackle the guy from the side. So, yeah, I put some of that blame on the linebackers.
So we're on the same page there. But let's get into the individual grades. And, of course, when you talk about Green Bay and you talk about linebackers, we might as well start with our suave guy. Is that the commercial that he has? Clay Matthews in his hair. Let's just start off with Clay Matthews. Had an injury this year, so it limited his production. But let's just jump in. What did you think about Clay Matthews' play this year?
Well, Clay Matthews, when he's healthy, he can be a playmaker. And the key word is when he's healthy. He had issue this season with the hamstring again, which always seems to be an issue. Then he had that Bennett fracture in the thumb, came back from that, and then re-broke the thumb against the Steelers and had to have surgery once again. But when healthy, he can be disruptive and he can be a playmaker. He could do a little better in coverage, but obviously he's a pass rusher. And they're paying a lot of money to be a pass rusher. But looking at Clay on the year, I would give him a C+. His inability to stay on the field, I have to dig him for that a little bit. And I know you don't want to take points off for for injuries, but his inability to stay on the field limits what he truly brings to this team.
Well, I will agree with you in a sense. When it comes to my grading, though, I won't use injuries against the performance on the field. But when I look at the overall concern here, this guy's not played 16 games since he's been a Packer. And so it is really starting to become a problem. I know he plays with a great motor. I know he's a playmaker. I know he's getting double and triple teamed. But you and I talked about it. Even when he got hurt this year, though, it looked like the defense at first stepped up and played. We need the guy on the field. That guy needs to be on the field. Granted, you cannot sometimes plan injuries or even protect yourself, but he has had a problem staying on the field. And I know it was a hamstring last year, a thumb this year. It's always something.
But he had a hamstring issue again this year, too. He had both hamstring and the thumb, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, did the hamstring keep him out of a game? I don't think it kept him out of a start, but I know he had to come out of a game, second half. But again, it goes to the injury bug. But oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was the Cincinnati game he ended up leaving early. And I don't think he missed the start, but the Packers missed him in that Bengal game.
Oh, they missed him tremendously. They missed him tremendously when he's hurt. And so, again, it goes back to, we were talking about this in the staff about injuries. You know, they've got to really take a long look at all of those growing hamstring injuries and see if there's anything they can do to try and limit those as far as getting these guys in shape and so on and so forth. But with that said, when I look at his play, I was a little bit more generous. I gave him a B for his play on the field. I mean, 7.5 sacks, led the team. Forced 3 fumbles, 4 tackles for loss, a couple of penalties. You know how I've been doing this on defense, looking at the penalties, because I want to see if anybody really stood out. But I have a major concern with Clay Matthews. I know he's a multi-million-dollar linebacker, and he is our all-pro linebacker and all of this, and Clay Matthews is great. Well, he can rush the quarterback awesome. Well, I am not going to debate that. But if I have a beef with Clay Matthews, Evan. Sometimes that motor is too much. Sometimes he needs to play more discipline. And you know right where I'm going with this, I would imagine.
San Francisco game.
He over-pursues.
One.
In every game, he over-pursues. And I'm not saying bench the guy, and I'm not saying get rid of the guy. But can you imagine how much better Clay Matthews would be if he turned the motor down 1 notch to be able to maintain his responsibility? I think sometimes he plays like a renegade. And when he
I would agree.
When he plays like a renegade, it hurts our defense. It puts unadded pressure on every other guy. And you're the first to admit, if he does that, it puts the pressure on one of the inside linebackers, and our inside linebacker play, as we're going to talk about, is not where it needs to be. And so if he's going to play that way, we at best get a stud inside linebacker to make up for his renegade style. So Packer fans can get mad at me, Evan, for actually finding fault in Clay Matthews' game because it's not where it needs to be. And that's all I'm going to say. You have anything else to say about Clay Matthews?
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head. He plays with a little too much reckless abandonment, and the playoff game, everyone was getting against the 49ers from 2 years ago, and Kaepernick bust onto the scene. People are giving Eric Wadden a lot of grief for him not holding at the point of attack, but there were a couple of times that Matthews gave Kaepernick a running lane, and he took it and ran with it. And to me, until Clay Matthews, and I'm sure I take a lot of grief for saying this too, until Clay Matthews can stay on the field for most of the season, and the only time he's ever played all 16 games is his rookie year, until he can stay on the field, extended amount of time. To me, he's never going to be a truly great player. He's going to be a good player. But I don't see him as a great player right now because he can't stay on the field.
Yeah, well, and thus our grades. Like I said, I didn't take, you know how I'm grading this. I'm looking at the play while he's on the field.
Yeah.
And even at this year, it was a B in my mind because of what I just talked about. So let's move on. And actually, we talked about what happens. Leads us to inside linebacker play. Let's go right to A.J. Hawk. He led the team in tackles, 118, had 5 sacks, 1 interception, a forced fumble, 7 tackles for loss. So let's talk about A.J. Hawk and being the 5th pick overall, number 1 for the Packers 8 years ago. How do you think A.J. Hawk played this year?
A.J. Hawk surprised me in a good way. Looking at him in the past, when he looked to be out of position quite often, he surprised me in a good way. He made some plays this year. He made some plays in the backfield, which he hasn't done a lot of. And when he got brought in the league, people were expecting him to be a playmaker, and he never lived up to that. But he's been solid, and he's been the one guy in the Packers linebacking core that's been healthy. Every year he's been in Green Bay, he's been healthy. He hasn't missed any time due to injury. He doesn't do anything special, and you know what he gives you. He's going to give you solid play in the middle of the defense. He's going to, be in the pile to make the tackle. But unfortunately, he gets washed up by offensive linemen way too much, and part of that is the defensive line, not giving him time to read and react. But for him, I got to give him a C+. He's an average player, and he, in my opinion, puts up average years. Especially for what the Packers were hoping to get from him. They were hoping they were getting a playmaker with the 5th pick, and he's never lived up to that. But this is the closest he's lived up to that during his career so far as this past year.
Well, and I'm going to be a little more generous one more time. I'm going to give A.J. Hawk a B, and I wavered B minus. But it's for what you said. I think if we looked at anybody that gave any ounce of consistency, it was A.J. Hawk. Now, he made his share of mistakes, as did other people. But when I look at it, he did have a fire in him this year. I thought he played very well. Do I think that he'll ever be a great linebacker? No. But I think he can be a solid guy, a guy that if he got another inside linebacker next to him, Evan, that was that smash mouth guy you're talking about, I think then we could even see a little bit more from A.J. Hawk. I think the pressure was put on him to try and be an inside linebacker that he wasn't. I think they were trying to make him that smash mouth linebacker that you're talking about, and it's just not going to work with A.J. Hawk. Am I disappointed that he isn't what we all hoped with the 5th pick? A little bit, but it is what it is. He's had a great career in Green Bay as far as being able to make plays and be part of the team. I give the guy some credit for going out there and being the leader on that defense that is depleted with talent. But I was reading an article, and you got to forgive me for not remembering where it was. It was when I was doing some random research around midnight one night. But the article was in the sense of on the Packers and, how do you grade somebody on a mediocre performance level to say he's the best of that group. And I don't think you and I do that. And I wish I could have found it. I tried to find it today, but I couldn't. But I give him a B. I thought he played okay in the middle. At times, he did make his share of mistakes, lost his containment, and allowed some probably bigger runs than should have been. I know a couple times that the tackling wasn't the best and a couple missed tackles, as with everyone on that defense at times. But I thought that he went in, did a competent job in the middle, and I think if we can get some talent around him, and if Clay Matthews can stay healthy on the field and contain his gap, that it will take some pressure off A.J. Hawk because, I think a lot of that, and like you said too, the defensive line, all of those people get better. It makes A.J. Hawk better because then he can be A.J. Hawk and not try to be something that he's not. And you're absolutely right. He is an average to maybe an above average linebacker at times, but is never going to be a superstar. So that's why I graded him at a B, B minus, right on that fringe. So let's go to the other guy that played in there a little bit, and that was Brad Jones. Let's talk about Mr. Jones for a little bit.
Brad Jones is another one of those guys that's has a hard time staying healthy. He's missed some time this year with an ankle injury off and on the field. Just like back into 2009 and the 2010 season, this time due to injury. He had a relatively couple of healthy years in there in 2011, 2012. But up until this year, the Packers didn't really know where exactly to play Brad Jones. They didn't know where to really play him until after DJ Smith, I believe it was, last year got hurt at middle linebacker, and they had to put him in the middle. And he's done a pretty admirable job at middle. He's another one of these guys that, he's 6'3", 230. He's underweight to play middle linebacker. But he's one that, when healthy, is solid. He ended the year with 63 tackles, 3 sacks, and that's only in 12 games played. But he's nothing special. He's an average to below average player who does what he can on the field, and he just does his best, and that's really all it is. And for him, he's another guy I would give a C to. He's nothing special and just can't seem to stay on the field. I think you're starting to notice a trend for the linebacker position for me right now.
Yeah, can't stay on the field, and average to below average play.
All my grades, too.
Yeah, average to below.
Straight C.
Yeah, average to below average. So I have about the same analysis that you have. And it's similar to A.J. Hawk. At times, Brad Jones can look like he can really play the position. At times, it looks like he's just an average guy. Do I think he could ever be an all-pro middle linebacker? No. Like you said, he's undersized for the middle. My question, though, Evan, is if we upgrade at inside backer, does Brad Jones have the ability to move back outside? Because where would he then go? If we get another backer in the middle, I would give the advantage to A.J. Hawk over Brad Jones at this point based on this year's play. If Jones stays healthy, he could give Hawk a run for that, but is Jones then the backup middle backer, or does he get a chance outside? What's your thought on that?
Well, I honestly don't think he's in the defense the Packers run. I don't think he's a starter at either middle or outside backer, and I think he's best suited to be a backup middle. If you need to put him in there in a pinch, he does really well. And yeah, I just think he's more of a backup in the middle, but they're not paying him like a backup. They're paying him to be, as a starter. So I think they might have to swallow that salary and send him on his way, to be honest.
And that very well could happen depending on how they go on defense. But with you, I'll give my grade on him. He's a C. And let's move into Mike Neal. And, I'm looking at it, 5 sacks this year. I got a couple stats on him I'll throw in there, and then I'll let you give your analysis. He had 30 pressures on the quarterback this year, which led the team. But he also had 13 missed tackles, which was second on the team to Morgan Burnett's 17. So he got some pressure, but he missed a lot of tackles. But how do you assess Mike Neal's play?
Well, first of all, a round of applause to Mike Neal, who played in all 16 games for the first time in his young NFL career. He actually stayed on the field for every game, and he started 10 of them. So I think he deserves a big round of applause for that. That was, I made a comment on Twitter during the offseason that I said that he's going to play at least 15 games I wish I could go back and find the tweet, but I tweet so much it'll take me days to find it. But the person thought I was nuts for saying that, and shoot, he played in every game, even though he was banged up. As you know, most of the year he still played. He never missed the game, and I think that's admirable, and he deserves big props for that. And also for the fact that I think a lot of those missed tackles could be that he's still getting used to playing in space. You know, the man dropped like 30 pounds. He dropped like 30 pounds to play outside linebacker position. And, again, I think that's admirable. Now, I think another year of seasoning at that outside linebacker position, he could be a very solid starter. But, unfortunately, I think that's going to end up being with another team as he is a free agent. But I would give him a C+, B- range due to being new at the position and playing as strong as he did.
I gave him a B-, and I gave him a B- because this was a unit that did get some sacks, and the thing is, you and I always talked about sacks not always having to be sacks. We need pressure, and I know Mike Neal was always getting the push. When he was asked to rush the passer, he did really good, but I thought his run containment needs some work. Like you, I think he was adjusting to a new position, but I do give him credit. He did play every game. When I look at the overall body of work, I just wish that his tackling would have been a little bit more solid. But I did put him in that B- range because he went out and played with a motor, you know, using the skill level that he had. I don't think that he tried to do too much. And unfortunately, again, we're going to talk about the skill level of our linebackers. But you're right on. He's a free agent. I don't think he's back in a Packer uniform next year. I think he's done enough this year on the field that some team's going to give him a little bit of a pay raise that the Packers would be willing to offer, and we're going to see him in a different uniform next year, which is unfortunate because, like you said, with another year under his belt, with the experience he got this year, he could only get better in that defense. Now, would he be the answer opposite of Clay Matthews? I'm not sure. But he sure did pressure the quarterback as much as you and I wanted more pressure. He was in the backfield an awful lot, so I gave him a B-. With that said, let's move on to another guy that we had and we thought he was doing really well, and you were questioning why he wasn't getting more playing time, and that's Jamari Latimer. What do you think about him?
Latimer is an intriguing prospect. I think we saw later in the year why he wasn't getting a lot of playing time, especially against the Bears, as he was often out of position. But I would give him a C+. He played admirable. He played well when he needed to play in a pinch, and he brought a bit of a pop to the linebacking core, which as we talked about, the linebacking core has been lacking. So I'm very excited with his potential. He's a young guy, only 25 years of age, but he's about the same size as Brad Jones, but he plays with a lot more physicality, and I'm intrigued by him. So C+, I'll keep it quick as we're running short on time.
Yeah, I gave him a C just because I saw a lot of inconsistencies with him, but I think he does have a lot of potential. I think he's a guy that's a hard hitter, one of the hardest hitters that I saw in that linebacking core, and he always would give a little bit of a pop. So I'm excited to see what he can bring next year. Hopefully he'll be able to learn the defense a little bit better, and hopefully he'll be able to get some playing time, and improve on some of that inconsistent play that he had going on this year. But like you said, we're getting a little bit low on time. Just about 6 minutes to go. How about we talk about Andy Mulumba?
Mulumba, I'll keep it quick. I'll give him a C. He played, if we're not expecting a lot out of him, he played pretty well, and I expect to see him to continue to grow as a player.
Yeah, I was right there with you. From what I saw, I put him at a C, C-. I don't think that the expectation was to have him on the field as much as he was this year. I think he has a lot of growing to do. Kind of like Latimer, a little bit inconsistent, still learning the defense. Another year in the system, some valuable playing time, You know, training camp will be fun to be able to watch and see how he progresses. There was times where he showed a lot of spark, and really, you know, I think he also has a mean streak somewhere in there where he can actually get to the quarterback and do some damage. So let's move on to the guy that was supposed to be that bookend to Clay Matthews, and that's Nick Perry. How do you grade out Mr. Perry?
He's one I'll give a C- to. I might even drop into the D+ range. I'm very disappointed in him. He's a guy that's been unable to, and a theme, unable to stay on the field. He's been injured, played on a broken foot for a lot of the year, played in 11 games, missed some time with that broken foot, came back way too soon, was slowed down by that. And the Packers need to play him on the right side more often. He rushes the passer better from that right side, and he's good at stopping the run, and he has a lot of potential there, but he has to develop a secondary move because all he really has right now is that bull rush. And if you get a big, strong tackle, that bull rush isn't going to work. And most of the tackles in the NFL are what? Especially on that right side of the offense, the left side of the defense, big and strong. So he needs to develop a secondary move. That's my take on him.
I agree. I gave him a C. All he can do is rush. That's all he can do, and it's not. And even a rush, it's not going to always get him to the quarterback. Now, when he gets to the quarterback, he does well. I mean, I believe he had 3 strip sacks this year, which is great. The problem is he doesn't get there consistently, and he did nothing in the run game. So I gave him a C, just because he has the potential to be a pass rusher. But like you said,
before that foot injury, he was doing pretty well against the run game before that foot injury, but that foot injury took a lot out of him. I wish he wouldn't have came back, but I guess we do got to, give him credit for playing through that injury.
Well, you can give him credit, but also if you're on the field, you're expected to make plays, right? And so, yeah, he was on the field, and I'm just, calling it like I saw it, Evan. Foot injury or not, his play in the run game after that, if that was the reason, so be it. But he still wasn't doing anything against it. So I can only grade him at a C. Now, he has great pass rush potential. But like you said, he needs to develop another move. Because 50% getting to the quarterback, if that's all he's going to do is rush, is not going to be good enough in the book. He's got to get better and get another move, whether it's a spin move or something, to be able to keep those big tackles and guards off key, like you said, to confuse them. So that leaves us with a group of others with about 2 minutes to go, Evan. We got Nate Palmer, Francois, Barrington, and Iowa. These are some guys: Barrington, Francois, Iowa, and Palmer. Do you have anything to say about that group of 4? I put them all at incomplete.
I give them all complete as well, but Palmer does intrigue me. He seems like a pretty solid athlete, and I think he could develop into a very solid special teams player and very solid guy coming off the bench when Clay Matthews more.
90 seconds.
Yeah.
Sounds good, bud. Well, I know that we have just over a minute to go. What are your last comments about linebackers? Where we go? Any last comments about grading out the linebackers for the Packers?
Well, one guy I would love to see the Packers target in the offseason is a guy out of BYU, linebacker, Kyle Van Noy, goes 6'3", 245, very freak athletic.
60 seconds.
Yes, all-independent first team, FBS Independent Defensive Player of the Year. He was a Chuck Dick Butkus Award semifinalist. Just an impact player, makes plays all over the field, can go sideline to sideline. He's great at rushing the passer. So he's one that I wouldn't mind the Packers targeting in the offseason, and I'm definitely going to ask our guest on Thursday about him.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear more about this guy. I heard he had a sack in the Senior Bowl, so definitely, maybe somebody that the Packers can snap and get on the team and be able to beef up a linebacking core that after today's episode, looks like it was nothing better than average. I mean, we only threw 2 B's in there, I believe.
10 seconds.
Mostly C's, a D from you. That unit has to get better. So with that said, everyone, hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for listening. We'll see you at the next red light.